Breaking the code of UFO disclosure. Welcome everybody to Visual Disturbance channel. Like, subscribe, share this thing out. Let's break the code and let's talk about the Liberty Code here on Visual Disturbance.
Got one that can see.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good night. Visual Disturbance back here once again, here in the disclosed location somewhere far beyond the bluegrass state, the south side of it. But today we have an interview at the round table. As you can see, it's something out of the ordinary, but we're pulling this off here in the disclosed location. And speaking of disclosure, we're going to be talking about that today. But I have a special guest here with me today, Tyler Gilreath. Welcome to Visual Disturbance, my friend. Thank you for coming here. We planned this a couple months ago, I think.
Right.
And here we are. And you live not too far from here.
So worked out great, man.
And it's just great. So, man, God bless you and thank you for being here. I'm so thrilled to have you. And talk about all this stuff. You're a preacher. You're a realtor. You're a book writer, author. I can't wait to jump into this one, man.
Yeah, Brian, I appreciate the invitation to come speak to your audience, man. This is cool. We get to do this in person. You know, that was not the original plan, but it worked out, and so I'm thankful, and yeah, can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as everybody knows, O'Brien Reese here, Visual Disturbance, loves UFOs, loves to talk about Vimanas, Orphanas, Ephas, the whole thing, biblical narrative, and here we are, we're going to be jumping into it. I got a pastor in front of me talking about the Liberty Code, as you can see on the screen here, the Liberty Code, written by Tyler himself. So let's just start this off. What is your take? Well, I'll take that back. Let me reframe. Where did you start this journey? And how did this come about, Tyler? And you've been preaching for how long?
17 years.
So how long ago was this, like, waking up to this phenomenon and thinking, hey, we're more than this spiritual application is more than what is being portrayed into our society. Like when you look at the biblical narrative, you can't, when you see these things, these concepts, these human constructs of mankind throughout time, and you start waking up to the biblical narrative and literally taking deep dives and studying thyself to be approved. And when you see these things, you know we're in a spiritual war. So today we're going to be talking about spiritual things in Ephesians 6. I know we'll be bringing that up. What's your take on that? Are we in a spiritual battle, Tyler?
Yeah, we definitely are. To answer your question, Brian, so before UFOs was on my radar, I had to be awakened to the demonic presence. Now that may sound strange, all right, coming from somebody who preaches and teaches, but the reality is that, you know, I knew the stories, some of the stories of the Bible, but like there were just some things that were not on my radar. You know, even in ministry, like I didn't know about the Genesis 6 sons of God, daughters of men. How did I not know that? I have no idea how to explain it. I mean, I probably had read it before, but never took time to like dig into what does this actually mean. And so it probably, for me, it probably goes back, I would say, you know, a good 7 or 8 years of just trying to study the ancient context. And that was kind of my first heavy dose into the supernatural. And I quickly realized that I had no context to understand what the early church fathers even had written on this. In my first book, Gospel Over Gods, I did a deep dive into what the early church fathers, and for those who are watching, the church fathers are just, people that came after, the disciples, and who essentially were, perpetuating the teachings of Christ, a couple hundred years after the establishment of the church. And they would like write commentary books, if you will, on passages such as Genesis 6, 1 through 4, or, the Deuteronomy 32, 8, and 9, which talks about the Tower of Babel and, the gods over the nations and the angels and all that kind of stuff. And so it was fascinating for me, and it validated what I was learning, because here's the early church saying this is what they believed. And on top of that, Brian, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, I did a deep dive into the Dead Sea Scroll material, and it's funny, like all the self-professing Christians today, like they embrace the Dead Sea Scrolls. They love that concept. We found older manuscripts that are 1,000 years older, right, than anything we had, but they don't really know what's in there, right? And so when you begin to dig, man, there was Enoch, sections of Enoch was a part of this, and they were very much tracking on the demonic. There were 4 psalms that were bundled together. Psalm 91 was one of them, and they saw these psalms as psalms of exorcism. And that's such a foreign concept to the modern church. We may just see it as a chapter in the Bible, but they actually relied on those psalms to help them have power over the dark realm, in a limited way. Obviously Jesus would do it on a bigger scale later, but it was such a foreign mindset and framework that I did not have. And so cutting my teeth on that ancient context was my first baptism, if you will, into this topic, which now I talk about and write about a lot. And so once I did that for several years, wrote a book on it, I would then later write a second book, a follow-up book to that first one called Gate of the Gods, and it's a deep dive into the supernatural war in the book of Revelation itself, which is amazing, another rabbit hole in and of itself, right? And so I thought, well, I'll just stop there. I probably won't write again. But then here we go. Our government now is saying, hold on, not so fast. Tinfoil hat people may not be crazy, right? And so now, even as we sit here, there's UFO hearings in the works in September and beyond of this year, and they've already had some in previous years. And so now it is a serious topic that is being talked about in the House, in the Senate, in the in the White House. In this past presidential election, President Trump said on multiple occasions, it is the most asked question that he gets about the whole UFO thing. And then you have like J.D. Vance, vice president, comes out 3-4 weeks ago, says that he is obsessed with the UFO topic, that he was going to take the entire August recess to dive deep into UFOs. You have people like Anna Paulina Luna, who is in Congress, and she's over declassifying government secrets, transparency, whether it be JFK, RFK, MLK, UFOs. So you have all these little factions of people that are talking about it now, as if it's real and it's a serious topic to explore. So, so when all that started, back in, 2023, you had a hearing in 2024. Even prior to that, you had articles in the New York Times, bombshell articles about, this Arrow or ATIP program, Lou Elizondo, ALSAP. And so that essentially asserts that for decades, the United States government has been engaging with a non-human intelligence. We've been reverse engineering, recovering craft of unknown origin. And so Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal came out with this article, and that was a bombshell. This is a legitimate paper, at least it was, and I guess it still is in some people's minds. But historically, it's been an important mouthpiece for American culture. And so, yeah, and when this became like a thing in the news, I like stopped and said, okay, let me investigate this as well. I'm going to approach it from the same way I approached my first, previous two books on angels and demons, supernatural word of the Bible. I'm very much, as I told you, an investigative guy. Show me the facts. I want to know. I don't want to just speculate. I love to speculate, but if I'm going to write a book, I want it to be fact based. And so I approached it from that perspective, evidence based. And what I found in my research really blew me away. And it was really a natural segue from what I was already studying and thinking about, talking about. Now it's just has a different lens. Now we're talking about this on a spiritual level and a physical level and a governmental level. So it's really all ties together. But that maybe answers your question about how I got into this whole space.
Yeah, it's like even myself, I come from a biblical background, but not a preacher status or not a preacher's kid, but coming from a Baptist setup, when you look into the Genesis 6 narrative, it's always the sons of Seth. The Sethite theory. So it's like, where do you come up with that? And then you look at the whole premise of everything. You look at the data, and you're like, well, the book of Job, the sons of God made with the daughters of men.
Exactly,
Job was looking at the sons of God too. He had some type of understanding.
Yeah.
And we become the sons of God of what Jesus Christ did.
Exactly.
On the cross.
Yeah.
And it's talking about a whole other type of category of folks. And people don't, this is the Old Testament we're talking about.
Exactly.
And people just sometimes miss that. I don't know if there's a misinterpretation. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a human construct like we was talking about off air, but something to that level. There's just something to it. So what we have here, we're going to be talking about disclosure. I think it's interesting because, we have these, different types of, let's just say, government control. And when you go back and look at a lot of FOIA documents or what have you, and you'll dig deep. And, with the technology and everything, the advancements and social media and everything, communications the way it is now, it's easier to get information out super fast. But when you go back to the 40s and you look at the narrative of what the three-letter agencies are throwing out, they've been tracking these craft out of the water. They've been tracking, and you can even go back to the Indians, the Shawnee, the Hopi. They're all talking about it. And the Native Americans were literally writing and documenting and saying, hey, why is there these tall beings coming from somewhere in the woods and taking my women and children? But they're giving us technology. Yeah. It's always that type of narrative. So it's like, what are we doing? So you have to look at, there's a certain topic you can't really talk about here. I'm going to try to respect the channel here and YouTube policies. But traffic, that's a big thing, and it's interesting that you got these Sean Ryan programs and there's these guys that's been involved in these certain groups and stumble upon these certain alien activities, and there's like these humans being transported in pods, all kinds of crazy like sci-fi video game type of thing, it almost makes you think it's all fake, but it has to be credible because these guys are like generals and they have purple hearts. It's just crazy.
You're exactly right. I saw that interview on the Sean Ryan. Joe, he's been on some other things as well, other platforms, but it was Michael Herrera. I think that might be his name. I might be getting the wrong guy, but I remember watching it and him basically saying he was already working kind of in a military role and just kind of wandered off the path with some buddies and came across this kind of black site, this secret site, and there was a craft just hovering there, and inside were, small humans, right? And so apparently the government or secret government, whatever you want to call it, they look for people that have certain tendencies or certain abilities psionically. And utilize them for their own needs, right? And psionics is a whole nother aspect of this, but it is an emerging aspect of this UFO phenomenon that, quite frankly, wasn't as tied to this topic as powerfully as it is now. You have, talking about disclosure, you have credible people validating not only these stories of what they're saying, but you have people actually doing it to summon craft, allegedly. You have this whole Skywatcher group, which is seemingly on the forefront of this movement. They're even working hand in hand with the government, which is a little unusual. Maybe the government's using them to help roll it out in some way, a soft disclosure. But essentially, the Skywatcher group consists of previous military gurus, such as the Jake Barbers of the world, who it was his job to recover down craft.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he's had encounters. He's recovered basically an egg-shaped craft, that was very mysterious. He had another encounter on the way to pick up another craft and got very emotional, and he said it was very spiritual. And so this group is basically allegedly summoning or inviting these craft two ways. One with electronics, certain frequencies they're putting out into the air at the same time, simultaneously, and also through the human element, which is their psionic assets. And apparently, I just heard this, a couple of days ago, they even know or sense when the crafts are going to show up. They're not just going through the protocols to invite them, but they also know. And whether this is true or not, I have no idea. But essentially, it was said that they knew a craft was going to show up and land, and so they invited NASA, and NASA came. At least a member or representative from NASA came. You hear this stuff, you're like, could this be true? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But that is where the conversation is now. It's now not relegated to Steven Spielberg genius, right? It's now, okay, this is happening. This is around us. These are the allegations. And so disclosure is an avalanche. It's for years, and I'm sure we're going to get into all this, but for years it was like a tiny little snowball. And it remained tiny because the government wanted it that way. They did not want this topic to be on the radar of Americans. And so they would belittle, they would ridicule, dismiss, silence anybody that would come forward. But now we're living in the technological age. Just like that, you can connect with people across the world. We all have cell phones now and cameras. And so now I think it's beyond the point that they can control the narrative. And so it seems like they're kind of backpedaling a little bit, trying to figure out the best way to tell the American people and the world over that we've been lying to you for 70 or 80 years. And we actually are engaging with something else that's not human.
So I'm sitting there listening to you, and I'm thinking about something I know. I've looked into, like I've mentioned off air, Aegean mounds, and looking into Nephilim giants, what have you. And I come across the Wilmington tablets. They have different tablets that are strategically laid in these mounds. They're buried with the Indians and the giant in some cases. And, you're talking about psionics, you're talking about communication with these beings. They've admitted that there's remote viewing capabilities, what have you. But this goes back to looking into shamanism. The shamans would take these primitive stick tools and go past the cartilage and stuff some stuff up there that would be of a level of, let's just say, astral projection. And I've seen things that they communicate with raptor-like beings, and they would mark. This was all this elaborate, like complex or illustration on there and carved into these granite. So are we doing that now? Like, there's been some primitive, let's just say, evil things that's been done. Manipulation on the highest order. We have anything from everything coming out as far as information overload when it comes to mechanisms and applications where, the food source, the water source, the airwaves, and then we have these psionic folks. And I'll just throw this out here, Tyler, and get your opinion. Everything you mentioned about technological advancements, cameras, audio, what have you, but they're set on a certain frequency. And we're talking about something that is beyond like your light spectrum.
Yeah.
So if they're tuning it and tuning us slowly, that light spectrum has always had this certain type of frequency that's going to dominate. So, light therapy, light spectrum, I know a little bit about, but your peripheral, the way you see things, the way you handle things, and when you look at the Native American culture, and I just seen this not too long ago. I did a show on it. There was a gentleman, I think his name's Ben Durick. I think he either worked for NASA or worked for Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. He was saying there was trillions of objects all over the earth, on the face of the earth. And when you come in contact with it, like how you get this mouse, I know how to communicate with the mouse, right? I use it with my laptop. But he's saying to go out in the woods, it will cloak itself or it will reveal itself to you. And I stood there and thought about it. The star people, the blue star Kachina, anything with these folks was incorporated into their folklore or what have you. But some of it, I don't even think it's folklore. I don't think it's superstition. I think they was literally communicating with giant beings, little gray beings, whatever you want to call it, anything under the sun. And we're looking at the ant people. And then, I don't know if you heard this term before, Manakuwabu. Manakuwabu is from Brazil. The Brazilian tribal leader not too long ago was like, that's the Manakuwabu, one of the gentlemen that he was interviewing, and saying this guy doesn't have really much outsourced as far as communication without, beside his tribe. He decided to go on this podcast, and the guy showed him a picture of a grave. He goes, Manakuwabu, the one that takes you to inner earth, the one that takes you to Sheol, the one that takes my people. I go to war. So then you have this whole android concept. You look at the FOIA documents. I think it's the full body teleportation transfer document. And it talks about these grays. And there's this classified machine with two obelisks, and there's this center point. You put something inside of it, and then all of a sudden there's a ripple effect and there's smoke, and then there's the grays on the other side of the veil. So what do you have here? We have this, there's something going on here. So you're mentioning psionics, you're mentioning folks being able to literally telekinesis and communicate with these light and, these orb-like creatures or whatever it is. And I know we can go down a big rabbit hole with that, but when it comes to nothing new under the sun, what Ecclesiastes said, so we have something here in our reality that we're just now catching up on. The Mayans, the Aztecians, everybody knew about it.
Exactly.
And they incorporate in our life. We've been brought up that it's all just wizardry.
Exactly.
But it is divination.
Yeah.
There is wizardry to it in a demonic scale.
Yeah.
But I think they've put the veil over our eyes, the scales, and just not let us, we've been dumbed down.
Especially in the West, excuse me, the Western, part of, the world. We are very scientific. We were brought up to, to approach life that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can't measure it or see it, or, if it's not common, then it must not be real.
Mm-hmm.
Other parts of the world, they're very much, in tune with the supernatural, and they understand this. Go over to Africa, it's a different, situations. They still rely on witch doctors and things like that.
Shamans and everything.
Yeah. And we're like, our doctors, well, did you go to Emory or, where'd you go? It's just a different philosophy. And so in the West, we are catching up
Agree.
To what has been in place for thousands of years. You go back and read the Old Testament, and God continually Yahweh warned Israel about engaging with those necromancers of the nations and soothsayers and all of that. And why would he do that? Well, he did that not because it didn't work, because it did work.
Yeah.
That's why there's warnings here. Let's not tap into that. And so evidently, from my research, our government privately has been trying to understand, and most likely how to harness this phenomenon and the technologies that it brings to bring really dominance air superiority, national security, whatever term you want to put in there. They're trying to leverage it to their advantage, and it's not only the United States. It's all over the world. This is a global phenomenon, and that somebody that's not used to this topic may scratch their heads and say, "Is it really global?" But then you realize that all of the geopolitical powers, they have had crash retrieval programs, reverse engineering programs for decades. And so it seems like these others, the visitors, are almost playing the nations against one another. And that's really what they did. If you go back in the antediluvian world, the pre-flood world, what did they bring man? They brought man a form of technology. And that technology accelerated their demise, the demise of humanity. It's like, well, what are they doing now? The same thing. They're offering donations, and that's what some of the whistleblowers say, is that some of these craft are just like donations. Like they leave these others, the visitors, will just leave them there in the field for us to find, so we can tinker with it, reverse engineer it, weaponize it, and blow each other up. So there's that aspect of it. It's always been a quid pro quo, type situation. They're in it for their own purposes. We're in it for our purposes. We think we can separate the two and not get our hands dirty. But the reality is that if you engage with this phenomenon, with these beings directly, which is what I believe is happening, the evidence shows that, we can't pretend like there's not going to be consequences, or there's not an agenda from these beings, because there is. And it's not just one thing, it's many things, quite frankly.
Well, I have this take on this. Like, you're talking about little mini cataclysms, I guess. We can go to Pompeii, to everything. There's always this eruption in Sodom and Gomorrah. You have everything from, it looks like a nuclear blast, and I think about this all the time. When you think about this topic we're on, and you speak about these certain mechanisms with these individuals, like, so let's just have fun here. You got build up and then destroy, clean it up. We could talk about Tartarian Empire. We could go down a big rabbit hole, but we're advancing so quickly in the last 100 years. I mean, when I was a kid, and my great grandfather, I used to ride horse and buggies with him to the store where I come from in Kentucky, and that's Little House on the Prairie days, right?
Right.
Back in the 1800s, but we still had that. And he was proud of that. And you got to think about it. The Amish, and the Amish still roll with that. And there's like, you talking about facets. I think it's what you said. There's certain things that just blows my mind, like different incretic like categories of folks. And you have like freedom of everything here in America. Everything's free. Like, it's a land of the free. Yeah, I get it. It's a blessing to be here and live here. But there's like a disconnect from our reality. And you look at symbolism, and they talked about this in the Midnight Ride at SpiracyCon. We talked about different symbols, and AI was saying when John talked to Grok, he was talking and asking about AI and the mechanisms. Like, I would leave hints and symbols. And if you look at Göbekli Tepe, you look at all these ancient sites, and you look around here in Kentucky, and you find these spirals. You'll find all these like looking like something off Stargate SG-1 series.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you'll think that's cosmological. That's like a Stargate, or something to do with ley lines, or something of that magnitude. Well, I'm just going to say it, man. I think we go to war with these beings periodically. It's like the movie Predator, with Arnold in it, and you got an 8-foot, 9-foot being coming up and cleaning up shop and being a predator.
Yeah.
And I think, the Indians, I keep bringing that up because that's the only culture that I've seen that has combated this to a level. Like, hey, look, we're tired of it. You're going to the woods, taking my children and women. I'm going to take you out. And then that's why you have Smithsonian coming in and cleaning up the mess. And there's tibulas, and these femurs are large as cars, and you have 12 footers riding these mounds. So there has to be something to do with that. And I think back to the gray, and I'm going to say this on here on Visual Disturbance. I've said it just not too long ago too. But the grays, you see the abductions phases and everything like that. And we mentioned earlier with the Manikwabu and talking about the ones that take you underground, the ant people. And then these Indians are worship them, and we do the same thing based off what I'm seeing. They're worshiping them. Well, here's my take on it, Tyler. And you probably don't hear that. I haven't heard anybody else say this. I think the Greys, you always hear that, the ancient alien guys are saying, "Hey, these are time travelers or what have you."
Yeah.
I think it's not that. I think they're pre-Adamic.
Oh,
You
yeah.
think we're talking about they used to? Here's how I feel about it. I think they was human at one point, and they advanced that they upload themselves so they could, cheat death. And now, just like, the son, you talk about the sons of God, Genesis 6, the flood of Noah, and we have these embodied spirits roaming the earth, according to the book of Enoch, you got demons. So man has went so far, and we're doing it again. We're building robots. We're trying to transcend. We're trying to ascend. So I think the Greys are literally, that's why you see in the abduction phase, they're always looking for DNA samples because they once was human and once they want to become human again. And you look at Mark 5, you talk about the Legion. The man was in torment, right? Jesus comes along and rebukes him and gets him out of there, and they say, "Is it time, Lord?" And he extracts this legion. It could be 1,000 of them, right? And he throws them into the swine. And I always say this: Jesus would not have put, even if it was the worst human being that on the face of the earth on top of the mountain with him, he would not have put those demons back into another man. He chose the swine.
Unclean, something unclean.
Yeah, and the hoofs and everything, they start panicking because they crave a human body. They crave a fleshly body again with anatomy. So they try to fly off the cliff.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, here's my theory. I'm thinking it's all speculative. I'm thinking like the Greys once was human, and that's what the whole Atlantis folklore. I think it's just an ancient civilization, and they're living in the ground now because you hear it all the time. They're advanced, and I just think it's we went too far, and that's why they know us so well. But take it for what it is. I think it's an ancient, not a time traveler. I think it's an ancient human. And
that's an interesting theory. So, that's not one I've really spent a lot of time exploring. It's very interesting, to think about it from that perspective. We're just trying to put the pieces together, trying to understand.
Yeah.
And there's so many possibilities. And what a lot of the whistleblowers are saying is that there's not just one species. There's multiple species. You have the supposed the mantis creatures. You have the tall grays, the little grays. You have the Nordics. And those seem to be kind of the predominant in sightings, abductions. And so I've tried to speculate as well. What's going on here. I mean, one thing that is not debatable is that they are interested in DNA. That is totally not debated. That is very obvious. The question is why. What are they doing with the DNA? And my research has led me to believe that we're definitely dealing with the powers of darkness, demonic, but that doesn't mean there's not necessarily a physical presence to it. We know even in Genesis 6, the sons of God obviously had to take on human form, right, to procreate with women.
That's right.
And that's consistent in the Bible. Even the righteous, good angels would appear as humans, look like men.
Sure.
Psalm 82 even says they'll die like men.
Yeah.
So, from the very beginning, even going back to Genesis chapter 3, the seed war essentially between the serpent seed and the seed of the woman, there's always been a genetic conflict.
Yeah.
And so the question is, are they building hybrids? They have a hybridization program. It seems like they do. Is what some of these sightings are a byproduct of hybridization and experimentation? I would not be shocked. I would not be surprised. Are they trying to pollute the gene pool of humanity like they did in Genesis chapter 6? And if so, why are they going about it this way? Well, could it be that they saw the punishment of the direct procreation, in Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 4, and Jude talks about it. They were locked in their gloomy chains of darkness for that. And so maybe they're thinking here is a way that we could continue our path of genetic experimentation with humans but not be immediately locked up in Tartarus for it. Is that a possibility? Maybe. And then you get into this whole collusion with the government power structures of the world. Supposedly, and I talk about it in the book. A part of ufology is President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Had this Gilreath treaty. With a couple of alien species. Essentially, a quid pro quo, going back to that concept, will allow you to abduct and to experiment. We might even help you, and this is why there are my labs or military abductions that people have alleged seeing military presence in the same room with these alien visitors working hand in hand together. And so there seems to be some level of cooperation with people in the know that they know that there's a give and take with these visitors, that we have to allow them to work out their agenda. And what is the exchange? What do we get back? Well, maybe we get back technology, because that seems to be what drives everything with our military. Is we are constantly looking for the next and better piece of technology to defeat the other nations around us. And so what if it's the case that, these beings are offering that to everyone, all the major governments around the world, and that they can continue to abduct people, to do genetic experimentation, hybridization, whatever they want to do in exchange for what those governments are looking for. So, yeah, very interesting. With the grays, and you have the tall grays, then you have the short grays.
Yeah.
Some have speculated, even in the non-Christian sector, that these are meat suits.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's all they are. Is basically a meat suit for an AI.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. Yeah.
Which, before we got introduced to AI a few years ago, we wouldn't really have a context for that. But now we see how quickly that is ascending and how intelligent it is becoming.
Yeah.
It would be very feasible for them to take genetic material from humans and to construct a meat suit and to embody that with their spirit.
They've already done it. They started doing biologicals. You hear that
exactly
at the 2023 congressional hearing, biologics. But they somehow connected human flesh with a component of on a motherboard, and it enhanced the computer tenfold. So then you got to ask yourself once again, like I was talking about at Mark 5, we're special because we're in God's image, and it's interesting that they have to use us. Everything, it's almost we have to be the user. Talking about the movie Tron, right? We have to be the user to let them in, but they're weak. But we're the key, right? It's so strange. Am I wrong on that? I mean, it's so strange.
Yeah, you're right.
And you're calculating and everything, but we come in this world through the matrix of the woman, and you just you're just so innocent. You soak up all this information before you can even speak. Your innocence, you're just walking around like you're observing and learning, and how to use your legs and arms and feet, and how to walk, crawl, whatever. And it would be so easy to manipulate that. Like they use the terminology of like, here's hoarding up the cattle. The cattle are here. They even made references that we are useless eaters and all that. So you have to think, are they building a superhuman soldier program? Are they using genetics from the ancient tribes of ancient? You look at the Amorites, Hittites, all the different giants. And who knows? I've said it all the time here on the channel. We become a new creature through Jesus Christ. Who knows what we have in us? We could have, God only knows what we have in our blood. We don't know. But it's interesting that the element of the blood element is always at the forefront. Always have it. It doesn't matter how you swing it. And I've said many times, even our components here, and I got to watch what I say, have an element of that. and that's a dark rabbit hole to go down. But when you have a blood resonance of any type of signature like that, it just resonates with me. I'm thinking shamanism. I'm thinking ascension. I'm talking about the ascended masters, which I hate when people categorize Jesus with that. You talk about the term Thoth with the emerald tablets. He's talking about going to the halls of Amity, where he gets all his data and understands. He comes back every 100 years and reveals himself through this magical world of crazy and gives people knowledge. It's the same narrative. And
to jump in there, I mean, you're talking about the blood aspect of it. You know, you have the cattle mutilations. I mean, that is as strange as it gets.
When it's strange,
you know, to where essentially these beings will almost surgically, you know, remove all the blood in the cattle.
Yeah.
You know, it's with like laser precision. You
From
know,
my aerial view.
Yeah,
pretty quick.
Very, very quickly.
I think it's AI incorporated. I think it's biological AI. Like literally, some man somewhere back in the day has done something so bad and went so far. And you know, what's your take on? I don't mean to cut you short, but what's your take on an offset, an ancient civilization? You know, like let's just have fun here. Let's just, if it's not on a map, what do you think about that?
Yeah,
an offsite civilization. Is it something that they've been advanced 10,000 years ahead of us? I don't know. What's your take?
So what you're describing is what they call a breakaway civilization, and you know, essentially that theory asserts that a previous generation mastered technology before its time, and that essentially we are still in the dark ages, and they are so far ahead of us that they're running circles around us. Now, I mean, that's, you know, I guess it's I can't say it's impossible. I tend to think that that's probably not the best explanation that's out there for, you know, for what we're dealing with. I mean, it's possible, but I really just think there is a truly a demonic component to this that has been there for ages and ages, and to me, I mean, that makes the most sense. I mean, the fact that you have in the Bible angels and demons and watchers and Nephilim and, you know, hybrids, and we're talking about this today, and it just seems like the obvious is here. We're dealing with what the Bible warns us over and over about, that Nephilim, you know, were the demons, you know, the spirits that were residing in people that Jesus cast out, the principalities and powers that Paul says in Ephesians that we wrestle with. You know, it just seems like, to say that is not a factor in all this does not seem genuine. I mean, it seems overwhelmingly convincing to me that what we're dealing here with is those elements, all of those elements, in conjunction with a human element, with a government element, with a psyop element. And it is not easily explained. I think it is more complex than we can even speculate or hypothesize about here on this program. But it is a combination of all of it. I mean, I think that some of these craft are ours. I have no doubts that, talk about a breakaway civilization, I think that these black budget programs are a breakaway civilization, really, in their own rights. I'm not suggesting they are necessarily living off planet or anything like that. But they are here operating covertly, and they are running circles around us. But yeah, truly, I mean, they are in a place where we cannot fathom, and they are in collusion, you know, with the Greys or whoever, you know, these species. That just seems abundantly obvious, and I talk about why that is, you know, in the book. So yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts on that rabbit hole. I know it's real deep, but
no, I love it. That's why we do this.
Yeah. I mean, very, very, very quickly, you know, I just think a lot of these crafts are ours. I think they are reversed engineered tech. I think that some of the sightings are humans in these craft, piloting these craft. But I do not think that all of these cases, especially the earlier ones, that I talk about in the book, which we hadn't even gotten into that. But
yeah, we're going to in a second. Yeah.
Essentially, you have some sightings that go back well into 1600, 1700, 1800,
Oh yeah,
and beyond, early 1900s, and a lot of the modern sightings. I would say that a lot of those might possibly be explained with, basically reverse technology, ARVs,
yeah,
alien reproduction vehicles, and that seems to be abundantly the case. I'll tell you this, and I've never said this on a podcast before. When my book was coming out, I was curious. I personally, Brian, had never had an encounter with something that I could say was anomalous. And so my wife and I, we were driving back from Florida. We'd been on vacation, and I was going to announce that my book, The Liberty Code, was coming out. And so I made a Facebook post about it. Hey guys, the Liberty Code's coming out. Just wanted to announce it.
yeah.
I'm driving on Interstate 75, driving north through Georgia, and within 60 minutes of posting about my book, The Liberty Code, my wife, she says, "What's that?" And I'm driving, trying not to wreck, right? Crazy,
Yeah,
going through North Georgia, Atlanta, all that. And I said, I don't see. What are you talking about? She said, "What is that right there?" I reposition my eyes. I see what she sees. Literally hovering above the interstate at about, I would say, 200 to 300 feet. And I know those distances well because I'm a drone pilot and I'm always looking at 200 to 300 feet with my drone.
Yeah.
There is a cylindrical metallic craft or object, let me say it that way, that was stationary, but that was also rotating. I would say this object was probably around 10 feet in length. And it was just stationary over Interstate 75, broad daylight. It was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, blue skies. And you're telling me I see this? I've never seen anything my whole life that I could categorically say was anomalous. And I see this within 60 minutes of announcing a book I've written about UFOs. Like that is amazing. That is not a government, in my opinion, that is not a government mission. I don't think the government will waste their time or their energy or their craft on me since I posted about my book, right? And I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not that important. And it was a Tic Tac shape, which is a classic type sighting that people have. And recently, the Tic Tac UFO encounter of Commander David Fravor on the Nimitz, that has come under some fire and speculation with Ross Coulthart, very good investigative journalist.
Australian, right?
Australian, saying that he now knows categorically that a Tic Tac is, I think, Lockheed Martin technology.
And that the jellyfish, too, I think. I think the jellyfish, they said, too.
Maybe so. And so that poured a lot of cold water on that case. Now, not everyone's convinced, but I'm thinking, here's a Tic Tac cylindrical object. No aerospace company is going to fly one over and park it right above me on Interstate 75 on my way back from vacation. It's not going to happen.
No.
So I say that to say that I am convinced that some of these sightings are our own black budget tech, but I'm also equally convinced that many of these sightings are definitely anomalous. They are definitely supernatural. So that was a very shocking thing for us to see, and very eye-opening.
Kind of interesting. this anomalous? Was it metallic? Was it emitting some type of metal look? Was it had a glow around it? What do we got? What are we looking at as far as this craft or this orb?
Yeah,
Tic Tac.
This object, it was metallic. It looked like a stainless steel refrigerator.
But here's the thing: did it disappear as soon as you looked at it? But it didn't disappear with your wife. But she said, "Look," and then you looked. Did it disappear after you looked at it for a few seconds?
No, it did not disappear. I just didn't see it because I was looking too far on the horizon.
Yeah.
It was more over us, and we didn't see it. We didn't stare at it for 5 minutes.
Sure.
We were literally driving, and so I would say we probably looked at it for about 7 seconds, something like that. And we both saw and described the same thing, which was basically a stationary propane tank that was metallic, looked like a stainless steel propane tank in the air. And it was just, every time it would turn, the sun would reflect on the metal.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and it was just kind of doing this.
Fascinating.
And I have a Part 107 unmanned aerial system drone pilot license. I am always looking up flying. I know what a drone looks like. I fly one hundreds of hours.
Mm-hmm.
I know what an airplane is. I know what helicopters are. This object fits nothing that could be explained prosaically.
Mm-hmm.
And we both have thought about it, and it just cannot be explained away. And someone says, well, maybe it was a balloon or something like that. Well,
no.
The interstate, there's a lot of air.
Yeah.
Trucks are driving constantly. If it was a balloon, it would be moving some direction. It would either be falling down or it would be moving to the right, to the left, forward or backwards. And this object was literally locked in place.
But just hovering over top of people.
Right over
60 minutes after you decided
60 minutes after
the Facebook or the
I posted about my book. Yeah, it was just hovering there, almost like right in the center of the interstate, about 200 to 300 feet up. I can't say it disappeared because we went under the object and I couldn't see it after that. So I don't know how long it was there before we got there. I don't know how long it was there after we left.
Wow.
But we definitely, saw it as well.
Fascinating.
Truly fascinating. Yeah. Very, very unexpected.
Was it, before we move on, was that day a stressful day or a decent day as far as just emotionally? This is kind of something I've been kind of researching. Was you just a relaxing day, fun-filled day, or because you was announcing your book, was there anything that was traumatic, any news, any bad news, anything like that? Because I've been kind of keeping tabs on this, and with cryptid creatures and certain states of whatever situation you're in. If you're in an angry state, you're driving down the interstate 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You hit something, and then you'll see things, right? And so then I've seen things where people just completely relax, see cylinder-shaped objects in the sky, see snakes in the sky, you name it. Yeah. I've looked at it. Just curious. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
It seemed like you had a pretty decent day using your book. You know what I mean?
We had a great. I mean, there's always a little nerves when you announce a new project.
That's a big deal.
I mean, and I just got through driving through Atlanta traffic. Of course, that's always
it's a Daytona 500.
Yeah. It's always chaotic, but I mean, nothing that we haven't done a million times. We've made that trip back and forth.
It's just sporadic,
very random, and I was like running the numbers, like trying to figure out what's the chances. I'm 37 years old.
Yeah.
What's the chances that I've never seen anything and I see something anomalous within 60 minutes?
Strange.
Of posting about a UFO book that I've written, and it was just the probabilities were just ridiculous.
Wow.
Like of that actually something like that actually happening. Yeah. So what was inside, I don't know. What it was, I don't know. I know what I saw.
Yeah.
And I just can't explain it away. We wrestled with it, try to be rational about it. And, it just wasn't normal. It just wasn't supposed to be there, but it was there. So I don't know. I don't know anything else about it. I wish I did. I wish I could have pulled over and,
how you doing?
just put the brakes on at
Yeah.
70 miles an hour,
Yeah.
going on the interstate, and just took out my phone. But
Dark out in your eyes and do
Yeah.
some psionics. Come on down here. You know, I'm
Yeah.
just joking. I'm joking.
yeah,
I'm
so
joking.
I wish I had more time to kind of study
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly.
But it is what it is. But
Oh,
so
yeah, but speaking of, I know time is of the essence here. Let's get into the Liberty Code book. I know we've
Sure.
been rambling on here about some really cool, interesting topics. We went down some rabbit holes, my friend. Um, the Liberty Code, I have one question for you, and I want you to take off. So I know that you've talked about George Washington in this book. So have you ever heard the term whenever George Washington was going into battle, he was like valiant. He's like not fearful at all. He would just walk right in, get on the horse, take off, guns ablazing, nothing happens. I've heard some stories that there was even, I think it was either a witness to it said that there was even holes in his all of his clothing, and the horses would die. You just pick another one and go up in the middle of it. So my question is to you: was George Washington? Let's just say he might have been more special than just an average human, maybe. Come on now, what do you think? You think that's down too far deep in the rabbit hole? Do you think George Washington might have knew about aliens and UFOs and had a little bit of psionic help, or UFO phenomenon? But the man is very, I know it's very relevant to our society, the George Washington narrative, but I've heard that story about him being shot and he'd just be like, nothing.
wow.
And is it Nephilim? Is he was he a hybrid? What is this man? What is George Washington? I know you talked about it in the Liberty Code. What's your take?
Yeah, that's interesting. But George Washington was definitely very special, and I definitely think people of his stature are being observed and watched and chosen for various purposes. What I specifically get into in the Liberty Code is I do talk about the legend where he was visited by an otherworldly being, supposedly, and basically this being showed him the future of America, uh, success, in what that looks like. That was a legend that really came about in the early 1800s. It was in a newspaper article, and there's not enough evidence to say that is historical. And it might be. So there's not enough evidence to say that is historical. It's possible.
Yeah.
We know that otherworldly beings have appeared to many people, so it's certainly possible. What I do talk about that is historical is I talk about there's a memorial service for David Rittenhouse. David Rittenhouse was a founding father who was the first director of the U.S. Mint. He was an astronomer. He tracked uh, basically Venus through the sky very famously. And he was an inventor, just a brilliant man. He died, and at his memorial service, which was in December, I believe, of 1796, basically all of Congress, the Senate was there, George Washington was there, people from overseas came, and basically you have the House, the Senate, the White House gathering together. And what was talked about that day by Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was the signer of the Declaration of Independence, he was tapped with being the MC for the event. He began to read some of Rittenhouse's writings, which talked about, basically speculated about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. We have that documentation. It is very lengthy. And so when I came across this information, which has never been discussed anywhere, this is truly information that needs to be a part of the public domain. But essentially, it's important because what's happening now, Brian, you have the Congress, the Senate, the House, the White House talking about, are we alone? I'm like, this has happened before. This happened back in the 1700s. Not only that, but the second president of the United States, John Adams, the vice president for Washington, he had a extraterrestrial diary where he would speculate about life on other planets. Hypothesize, are we alone? Beyond that, the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, had 2 UFO reports put on his desk. They both described extraordinary claims. One was essentially an object that just came crashing down to the ground, a large object the size of a house, that was, I think, red in color.
Red.
Yeah, it was red. It just came crashing down to the house, or crashing down to the ground, the size of a large house. And in this letter, which was written to Jefferson, there was it was called Figure 5. It was a picture of this letter, a picture of this object in this letter attached to the letter. This letter is, or this object rather, the drawing of it is non-existent. You can't find it. It's not anywhere, like someone removed it. So I have the letter. The letter's describing the object.
Somebody photoshopped it. Somebody photoshopped it back in the day.
Yeah, it describes it. There's a drawing supposedly of this UFO, and
Just photoshopped it right out of existence.
it's gone. It's not there. Now, this letter is in the possession of the American Philosophical Society, which was the think tank of the day. It was where all the brilliant minds came to talk about all kind of matters. And Benjamin Franklin was the president at one time of this society. Jefferson was also the president of the society, as well as the president of the United States. And he read this letter to the American Philosophical Society. That's amazing. There was another UFO report that happened, I think, in 1801, 1802, where two basically shipbuilders encountered an object that changed shape in the sky. It took on the form of a Scottish Highlander. It took on the form of a sea turtle and some other type
In the sky.
in the sky. It just changed
Like a large turtle.
Yes, morphed, changed shape in the sky. They wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson. That letter, I believe, is on display in Monticello, however you say it, which is Jefferson's mansion memorial. It's hanging on the wall. So that it's interesting in my research, Brian, that the first three presidents all touched this topic in some way.
Hundreds of years ago.
Hundreds of years ago.
Here we are.
And it's almost as if the visitors themselves were preparing the office of the president for disclosure. And that is what I truly deep down believe, is that they have been tracking and they would understand the power that the president would hold and the voice that he would have over the entire globe. You know, the fact that we're here, we're on the cusp of a revelation which says we are not alone. And as soon as someone like the president says that, somebody in his cabinet, our world will be different. It's going to change.
Wow.
And it's going to change in so many levels. And so I wrote this book to help prepare Christians, believers, the church, for this type of, whether catastrophic disclosure or soft disclosure. We need some context, and this book helps give you the historical and the theological context to wrestle with this topic.
Speaking of wrestling, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities, high places, right? So I thought about it. A turtle. An imagery of a turtle.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what we talked about here earlier in this conversation about what Van Dirk was saying, that it would interact with these elements would interact with folks.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, maybe there was either holographic technology back then, and our president was seeing something alter in the sky. Was it maybe he loved turtles? I mean, am I wrong? I mean, does it sound kind of crazy? Well, I'm thinking here.
Yeah, the two individuals that saw the object, they were shipbuilders. So yeah. I don't know if it would be a natural thing to show somebody that's at sea a lot.
A turtle of aqua life or something that would be in the ocean.
Exactly. Something that is out of place that should be in the ocean.
But but this is before TVs.
Exactly.
You're getting a full blown projector.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Have you heard the peer review document with Beatrice? Have you heard of Miss Beatrice? She's an astronomer. And I think of Bella Rory, I think how you pronounce her last name, but she's an astronomer.
I have, yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The grid, the so-called grid dome that she's discovered this light reflection that she was incorporated to her study from 1949 to 1958,
pre-satellite,
before Sputnik and all those guys.
Pre-satellites in the sky.
She said it's thousands of years old, probably hundreds to thousands of years old. She said it might be even there from the beginning. So, end quote.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if it's there in 1800s or 1700s or whenever George Washington and Mr. Adams, I'm just saying. So whatever that is, and I would just say this: I think it's fallen angel, a fallen angel narrative. I mean, why would that be there? That's an infrastructure there to control.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but if that is any truth to that, and she can actually get that out there and really put that in the UFO phenomenon, that'd be pristine, right? That'd be excellent.
Yeah.
But I prayed for her safety. It's crazy. So you see this, there's a red craft coming down. There's documentation of that. I wasn't poking fun at you. I was just saying, look, they must have had literally somebody zap it out of existence. No joke. It's just ironic to me that some of these things just go that are very detrimental to the society and they just vanish.
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of cases of craft just cloaking or vanishing. That was not the case in what we experienced. Now, had we stayed there longer, maybe that would have happened. But yeah, it's truly fascinating that this phenomenon has been going on for thousands of years. But specifically, I wanted to investigate how long has it been going on in America.
And there we are.
And here we are
code.
since the very beginning. The first three presidents wrestled with it, and here we are wrestling with it.
Wrestling once again. It's a different, but we're in a different element now. We're in a different society. So here's the thing: it's like we got psionics. We got people that I even heard that psionics is tied to autism. I've heard and then there's other things that go with related to that.
Telepathy tapes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what if it's like have you ever heard the term DMT and LSD? But DMT is in plant life. DMT is like on the face of the earth, and we even have it. Some people make more, some people make less. What have you? That's the anatomy of the body. We can't help it. It's a chemical compound. It's interesting that we talked earlier about astral projection, the shamans doing primitive things to communicate with these beings.
Yeah.
So now, we have these men back in the day that's just trying to build our country and advance it, and they're just they're not on anything. They're just like, hey, I'm just trying to go outside and look at the beautiful sky. So it's interesting to me. I did not know that about the turtle and the red craft. I might have come across it one time during a program, but I'm so glad you shared that. I'm glad you shared your testimony too with the Tic Tac in the sky. If we have a few more moments, I know we're limited on time, but what brought you to making this Liberty Code? Like, I know we talked earlier about Genesis 6 and you come from a preacher background, but literally it's so relevant today because men's hearts will fail them looking after the things coming upon the earth. And when they see this, what you see on your lovely cover here of Imana or whatever, you're going to go back to Will Smith days, 1996 Independence Day, right?
Right.
And you're going to go down in panic mode and say, it's all over with. The Anunnaki's here. They're planting seed. They're going to here to destroy us.
Yeah.
And you can thank the rhetoric that's coming out right now with the 3-Eye Atlas with Mr. Avi Loeb.
Right.
Hello. He's like, the great ship is here to take us and destroy humanity and go around the sun. They know the longitude, latitude, who the folks are, who the occupants are. I mean, it gets crazy, okay?
It does.
So what would you tell the audience out there about how we combat these things spiritually? And then a lot of people will be like, are we going to go, arrowheads, go back into primitive days and go javelin on some of these folks? It's from these UFO or star people, whatever, 8 foot tall, whatever they are, mantis people, whatever it is. What would you say how to combat these things? And I know you've probably written in your book, but what would you say how we could combat it now in 2025?
Well, I think the first aspect of combating anything is equipping yourself. And I think that's what this book does. It helps give you the framework, the context, the background, so you can equip yourself, like to know what's come before, what's happening now. And that's really step one. I lean into the supernatural explanation too. And so how did Jesus combat that? Well, ultimately he combated that with the Word, staying close to the Father, the Word, having that connection, not breaking that. The temptation will be for many people, if the psionic aspect of this continues to grow and more people learn about it, they start doing CE5 or some other, protocols, is to experiment and to reach out and to see if they can get any kind of reaction or direct contact or anything like that. And so that is, I believe, really probably the most dangerous aspect to people's faith. Is the curiosity, aspect of all this. And Israel was curious, and they continued to fail the test over and over and over again. So I believe that is a big issue that we will have to face, and as well as the framework or the lie that, the possible lie that, we're not alone in the universe, right? That these creatures seeded the earth. They are the engineers behind humanity and plant life and animal life. And the explanation that the Bible gives is no longer valid. It has been debunked. That could totally dismantle someone's faith overnight if they hear someone of authority saying that, categorically. So that's an aspect of this. There's so many factors I get into the book we don't have time to deal with, but I believe at least step one is equipping yourself. You owe it to yourself, to your church, people around you, to know the history behind this phenomenon, to know how deep it goes, to understand why some of this is coming out in Congress even now. Right now, this is relevant right now. This is in the news right now. That's why I wrote it, and I hope and pray that anybody that picks up a copy, it'll bless their life, and they'll learn a lot of things along the way.
Where can they pick a copy up at?
Amazon's probably the easiest place. All three of my books are on there. You could either just type my name in, Tyler Gilreath, or type in the Liberty Code, and it'll pop up there. So
very cool.
Love for your listeners to check it out.
Yeah, very cool. I have one more thing for you. In Jeremiah, it talks about he forged a living soul. He knew thee before I put you in the womb.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everybody out there that's listening, because a lot of people out there are very intuitive and they know what's going on, and we're dealing with the spiritual application. I think it goes down to everything we discussed today. They want that beautiful soul. It has nothing against flesh and blood, this physical anatomy. It is to dip that precious soul that God Almighty created and breathed into Adam's nostrils. It's the same. We're living in the nothing new.
Yeah.
And I really do feel that way. And I think, they can come up with, molecular biology, change everything on a nanoscale, whatever.
Yeah.
But they really, truly want that light, the light of God that was forged into that soul. I really do think that. I really do. That's just the way I feel, Tyler.
Oh, that's exactly right, Brian. You're dead on. That is their objective. That is absolutely their
command and conquer. Command and conquer and destroy.
Yeah.
But I know our time is limited. I have been so blessed today, Tyler, for joining me on Visual Disturbance. Will you come back? Will you come back to Visual Disturbance?
Absolutely, man.
I don't know about the round table next time. We'll have to make this arrangement. But I just want to thank you, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I want to thank you so very much for coming on.
Absolutely.
And go check out Tyler Gilreath at the Liberty Code. He's got a few books. And if there's anywhere else they can find you on social media, anything else like that on YouTube, Tyler?
You can look me up on Facebook, Tyler Gilreath, Investigative Theologian.
Very cool, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, check him out. He's a pastor here in the somewhat disclosed location out there toward the Pigeon Forge area. But yeah, check out Tyler if you get an opportunity here. He even preaches for 17 years as an author, and now he's out researching all this Vimanas, the EFAs, and all that, the UFO phenomenon. But I just want to thank you, man, for coming out here and hanging out with me on Visual Disturbance. But until next time, real quick, will you just end us out of here and just any last final words here before we conclude the broadcast?
Man, just fight the good fight.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Keep fighting. Don't give up.
Don't get visually disturbed. You might, after all this stuff, don't be looking at turtles in the sky and talking to them. Seriously, I'm not making fun, because there is some stuff coming upon the earth where it's like holographic technology. They keep pushing that. I mean, it is. They keep pushing it. Project Blue Beam, all that. You could literally be talking about that right now. All this information that you just closed here. I mean, phenomenal. But until next time, Visual Disturbance, I'm out of here. Tyler, we'll see you on the next one, man. Hopefully you'll be out here maybe 2026. Maybe we'll have each Conspiracy Con here soon.
There you go. Let's do it.
All right, man.